Normally, Judit, I start with you in deference to your role representing the government, but today I want to start actually with you, Christoph. Sorry, you moved. I want to start with Christoph because this is your first time on our panel, so welcome. Thank you for joining us. And I suspect that not everyone in this room will be familiar with you or the HCEMM. We really, Christoph and I have had several interviews, so we know each other over the years. We really do have to find a better way of saying it. HCEMM, maybe that's it, HCEMM. Now HCEMM works a lot on R&D. Its sort of principal aim is to promote healthy aging. And as I get older, that's something I'm increasingly interested in. And I live here in Hungary, so hopefully I hope to benefit from it. But what I think is particularly interesting about HCEMM is that it embodies this idea of partnerships. So you have the European Molecular Biological Laboratory as an advanced partner. You're set up in part by Semmelweis University and the University of Szeged, so there's partnerships there. I remember the very first time we did an interview, you were talking about how you wanted to partner with industry. So there are partnerships there. So perhaps we can take a couple of minutes to introduce HCEMM to the audience, and then to talk about how you find that partnership finding, how is that system working for you, and what maybe are the roadblocks that we need to ease the way through.
Yeah, we also have the Biological Research Center in Szeged as partners, and if you read the Budapest Business Journal frequently, we cover 10 slots a year that makes 40 articles. Right?
The mic is working?
Is this working?
Yeah. That one is working, yes.
Okay. So we have, in my time already, released 40 articles in the Budapest Business Journal about what we do. So I hope that some people have seen this. So we are actually the largest EU grant for science in Hungary, and were founded by the National NRDIO funding agency to basically oversee large-scale grants. And we have now an EU grant for 15 million euros, we have a national laboratory grant for 8 million euros, and we have a thematic excellence grant for 5 million euros, which is the government side of the funding. And we have now partnered with at least a dozen companies, and some of them are rather large companies. For example, QIAGEN is one of them, a company that makes a lot of diagnostic tools. And we also work with startup companies, we work with pharma companies. Our mandate is to basically make new diagnostics and new treatment options. But we are focused on the diagnostic side of things because personalized medicine, which means the appropriate administration of medicine, can only be done if you have very good early diagnostics. So one example, I have actually a patent to diagnose blood poisoning, sepsis, 2 days before the first clinical signs, which increases your chance to survive by 64 times, and it's just been evaluated in a clinical trial at the Charité in Berlin to be 86% accurate. It's a PCR test, can be delivered in 4 hours for less than 10 euros. So that actually is like sort of the thing that we do. We do a lot of molecular things. We actually partner with industry for whatever industry wants. So we don't come with a great invention and try to convince someone that this is what they need. We go and listen and say, what do you need? And this is basically an approach that sets us aside from university professors who work on basic research and come up with something where they think it's a great product, but it isn't. It has a lot of pitfalls that they don't know about because industry works completely different from academia. So this is how we actually get into bed with industry. What we can facilitate is, for example, EU grants with industrial background. So we have actually several companies that partner with us frequently on the development of new products on the EU level, and we make sure that they don't have to pay money for it. So through our advanced partner, the EMBL, which headquarters in Heidelberg, we have actually a grant writer over there that supports the submission of proper EU grants that are not for the basic research only, but they are on the interface between industry and basic research. We have 2 phase 1 clinical trial units. We have a biobank, so we can actually work with human subjects. We have several ethics approvals by the TUCAP, the National Hungarian Board, that were awarded to us. And actually me, the botanist, has one of them. German botanist, okay, like this, 2 Germans, 2 Hungarians on the panel, I think. So nice mixture. So this is what we do. If you are interested in working with us, we are of course on LinkedIn, we are on all kinds of social media. We do the so-called science cafes. The next one is actually tonight in Debrecen, then comes one in Page next month. Come and see us. We have 30 research groups and 4 advanced core facilities operating right now.
Thank you, Christoph. Quick follow-up, if I may. Clearly, you're having some success in getting partnerships together. Do you find, is the marketplace here open to that idea of partnership? So are you happy with the level of partnership you're getting from industry?
So we are in Hungary, a relatively small country with no venture capital and risk capital available. That is certainly a challenge. Yeah. We do have some serious players in the pharma industry and in the biomedical industry that we are working with. And what we see is an emerging network of private clinics, which actually have services above and beyond what the university hospitals can offer. Me as a cancer patient can talk for a very long time on what better machines some of the clinics in Szeged, which is not really like that close to Budapest, have. So we see a trend that these kind of things come up in Hungary, but it's certainly something where we don't work in Hungary only. We work definitely on the European level and on the international level. So we also apply, for example, to grants for the NIH in the States. Because we brought people back, Hungarians, from the NIH to work in Hungary again after many years. And they have the expertise on how to actually apply for these kind of funds, which can be distributed worldwide. Yes.
Thank you very much. Now, Judit, I normally start with you, so it's high time I get back to you, I guess. A very simple question, which is unusual for me, I know. How welcoming is the state of input from the private sector? So is it something that you're willing to embrace? Is it something, not you personally, you, the government, obviously, is it something you're looking to limit or to put restrictions around? So how do you view that part of the relationship?
I think it work now? Yeah? No? Can you? Okay. Yeah, okay. Now it's working. Yeah, I think I had to switch it on. Also, thank you very much for the invitation again. Now it's a series, I can say, that I'm here. I think we are quite open for any kind of collaboration because although Hungary is a very small market, as you mentioned here, but we are one of the most creative ones, how we can manage our healthcare system out of this so small amount of money. So we have to be creative, and within this creativity, we always welcome every kind of contribution, even though if it is a private one. Of course, we have to define the place, how we can manage it, and what you mentioned in the publication of the Gazette, actually it's a draft that has been circulated now and publicly available, is the first step to have a definition on then what we can consider as a private healthcare provider, how we would like to cooperate with them. So we started to have kind of development on this field, but of course everyone is welcome, and we were always quite open to have such kind of cooperation, not necessarily a financiation, but a cooperation definitely.
Thank you, and thank you for that correction. So the draft is out for public consultation. How long will that be? Are we talking about months, 6 months? a year? Is there a timeline on that public consultation?
Well, the public consultation is approximately 10 to 15 days, I guess, but it has to be adopted by the parliament, so it will be a little bit longer process, but it will be managed within a month and 1.5 months.
Okay, that's soon, right? So we've heard that the government is willing to invite partners. Katalin and Wolfgang, we'll start with you, Katalin. As representatives of at least some of the private sector, do you get the feeling, does the private sector feel welcomed by the government?
Thank you so much. I think in this sense, the private sector in terms of the healthcare providers and in terms of the pharmaceutical industry is pretty different, I would say. So while the private sector in the healthcare providing sector can actually help out the government in terms of filling out the gaps that might not be able by the public hospitals, for example. So it's like, I would say, in this sense, it's a needed cooperation also on both sides, I would say. For the pharma industry, that's I think that's different because our cooperation is based on a different contract, I would say. So we are providing not only the drugs, but we are providing the health of the people, which is like a constant need. So it's not really a choice, I would say, of the government to cooperate with the industry in this sense, may it be local or global, but it's a need constantly. How welcome we feel, I would say that in the last year we have seen some developments, and we are hoping to see some further developments. And here I'm talking especially about what we are usually talking about, the yearly reimbursement, which we expect for January again, which will be a huge improvement in terms of predictability if we will have again a reimbursement round. So that's what we usually say, predictability is the key for any sort of companies, not only pharma industry, but pharma industry, which we are representing, definitely it's a key. So in this sense, I would say that we see improvement. On the other hand, several of the government representatives promised to deliver on the wish of the industry to decrease the 40% back, which is again key for operating. But if you allow me, I would say that we have to look a bit further to those two issues which we are usually talking about. So we have to see what kind of healthcare do we want in the coming years. And in this sense, we have to partner up in the prevention. We have to partner up in how to involve society more in making themselves healthier. So I would say that these will be the key issues for the coming years. And hopefully when we are less engaged with the everyday problems, we can look a bit more further as an industry as well.
A future view is always important to have. Wolfgang, anything to add to that?
Yes, I see a certain readiness to talk about such initiatives. However, I feel there's still a lack of vision, especially what does this mean for Hungary, for the government, independency from the business sphere in healthcare and from foreign companies. How much should this be in Hungarian hand is a fair question. And also the question, what's about profits along the value chain? Is this okay if there are profits? How much is a fair profit? And I see some discussions here, and I have the feeling the government did not really form an opinion about this, or it's a bit vague still, and this makes it difficult then to come to a clear path forward.
You have a wider view than just just Hungary through your business interests. Is it a common problem across the region, or so is? And I don't want to be subjective. I don't want to say is Hungary worse than anyone else, but is this? It's like we all know wherever you are in the world, there is not enough money that can be spent on healthcare, and that's true whether you're in the United States or the UK or Germany or Hungary. So is this struggle to find a vision for the future? Is that a common problem?
I think yes. As we see in Europe, there is no healthcare market, non-common healthcare market. All the countries are struggling for themselves, and there's not enough money in the system. Democratic change, we know what is going to happen, and and maybe we will maybe also speak later on about stockouts. I mean, it's always the same problem. At the end of the day, it's a question how to allocate the funds which are realistically available in the most efficient way, but give the politicians also the freedom or the possibility to explain the needs or the restrictions to the population, and this is a difficult task.
Katalin. I mean, that also kind of fits in with health education as well, doesn't it? We have to. None of us are in this alone, and as Sylvain was saying, with the ability of digitization to remove frictions will help. It's an approach we've got to take right across the board. Sorry, Katalin, you really wanted to say something.
No, just joining to what you were saying, Wolfgang said that. This is especially why we in Hungary need to look forward a bit more and to build up the healthcare system for the future, because the competition worldwide, globally, is huge. There are huge problems for all the companies, for example, globally, while their need to deliver at all the markets. Just let's talk about China or India or the US, which means that we in Hungary are like such a small players that if we want to stay competitive, if we want to just have the drugs, then we have to be competitive, and we have to welcome the international players. And it's not a question of whether we would like global players here or not. It's a question of the health of the Hungarian people, which we cannot deliver without those players. So that's what I wanted to say, that it's important for the future of the Hungarian people.
Yeah, I don't in any way wish to put words in your mouth, but it's less a wish and more a must.
Exactly.
Christoph?
So you also have to look at what are actually the working conditions in Hungary for medical treatments versus other European countries. And I'm a cancer patient, so I know that number quite well. Only 20% of the Europe-wide approved cancer treatment options are available in Hungary right now through the government.
It's not true.
It's not true?
No.
How much is it then?
90%.
Okay. We need to look at our sources.
It's getting exciting now, isn't it?
But certainly we need to look at these studies and find out what can be done in order to really work on this level. And the other thing is, that number I'm sure of. 1/3 of all treatments in hospitals are actually false, are wrong right now, because they are either misdiagnosed or the people that are treated don't behave like the average. And we need to study the Hungarian population much more in order to find out what Hungarians respond to favorably.
I can share this.
And that especially is true for females, because most of the clinical studies are only done on men to avoid pregnant females and such, right? So there's a whole bunch of treatments that do not work at all for women, but they are still prescribed. So these kind of things we need to get a handle on, because if you want to lower the healthcare cost, you need to have the most efficient treatments administered to those that respond to it. And that is actually a big challenge worldwide, and this is something where Hungary needs to really have a handle on it.
Thank you, Christoph. I'm sure you would like
Yes, you know me. Okay, so I'm sorry. Yeah, we have to compare our sources, but I'm pretty sure that on my one. So yeah, I would like to reflect first on Katalin, but Katalin mentions that competitiveness is very important on the European level as well. And since we have now the presidency and we are managing, for example, the negotiation on the pharma package itself, it is very important to highlight that competitiveness is a huge problem through Europe, not just for Hungary. But of course, I just really wanted to raise this issue, how private and public partnership can be increase in the future is what has been mentioned, the efficacy and the outcome of the certain therapies and how we can define it and how we can prove the effectiveness of different drugs and how we can help doctors to choose the best efficient treatment. Of course, we can different approaches on the availability and of this treatment, but as we could see, there is no really a patient who cannot get his treatment because of there is lack of sources on that. So of course there are some administrative hurdles with the named patient based requirements and so on, but there is availability, and we are respected as a very highest level to provide medical treatment for oncology patient. But I'm always happy to discuss it. But the most important one is that there should be a proven that the efficacy is managed and it meets the criteria and the expectation that has been done, and it has to be provided anyway. And there were lots of best practices in the last couple of years, and I do hope that there will be more and more. And in this field, there should be necessarily and perfectly a cooperation, even though if it is a private-public cooperation.
Okay, Christoph, you wanted to come back.
So I worked, being German, in Germany, in Canada, in Austria, and in Hungary. And I want to mention one benefit of Hungary over all the other countries that I've ever worked in. It's a central system. Mm-hmm. So we have one decision maker. If you look at Germany, for example, every state has their own healthcare management, which is a disaster, because when you look at the pandemic, in one part you can go without a face mask, in another one your dog has to have a face mask, and whatever that is. Okay, so here we have a centralized system that can make decisions for the whole country. And that is actually a real major benefit from my point of view, because with this, you have actually the ability to also implement things that in Germany, like you have just seen this picture of the new digital way of ordering in pharmacies. The first time I got a prescription in Hungary, I was told, you can go to the pharmacy. And I asked my wife, who's Hungarian, which pharmacy do I need to go to? It's digital. You can go to anyone in the country. Okay, in Germany, your prescription, the pharmacy is right next to the doctor, is a building where there's a piece of paper that you can actually get your prescription from, and that's the only place where you can get it. So these kind of things, Hungary is much more advanced and centralized, so the decisions can be made for everyone, and I think that's a major benefit.
It's a good point, Christoph. Thank you for that. And of course, it brings us back to what's been a recurring theme in these roundtables, which is that it's not just that there's a single decision maker, there's a single bank of data, which is a gold mine that hopefully organizations such as yourself can mine and dig in. I want to move on to supply chain resilience, because I know that that's a matter that Wolfgang in particular likes to talk about. But before I do that, could we have are there any good examples of PPP already in action in Hungary that we can raise as an encouragement to others, perhaps? Private-public partnerships. All right, well, let that sit while you think about that. And along a similar theme, what is missing? Now, we've just heard something that is very advantageous for Hungary, but what's missing from the Hungarian setup that we could borrow from the Czech or the Polish or whatever? So what best practice are we missing out on? And then what are those examples of PPP?
First thing that I wanted to come back to this cancer issue, I wouldn't say debate. One thing that I think we should really elevate is the systematic availability, and that comes back to both of you, like somewhere in the middle, that the named patient program versus the regular reimbursement. So I think that's somehow the consensus between the two of you, that the more treatments are available on a systematic approach, then the less we need in the named patient program, because as Judit was saying, like everything is basically available in Hungary, and that's why we don't like, for example, FPS weight indicator, because it kind of says that it's not available, while legally speaking, everything.
Can we record it?
No, I mean, absolutely. You know that I represent this because I know that legally speaking, everything is available in Hungary. The question is the systematic availability, and that's what we need to improve. And I think that's somewhere making a consensus between the two of you.
Just one sentence, and I sorry.
No.
so sorry for that. Do not forget to everyone, when you are expecting a so personalized medicine and defined in a very, very precise way to have a personalized medicine, except that sometimes it needs personalized reimbursement as well. So you have to have the balance on that. That's why sometimes it is difficult to have a decision, a general decision on something which is extremely personalized. I just wanted to add that.
Absolutely, and then a bit of advertisement for next Monday. There will be the conference of the Hungarian Health Economist Society, where the colleagues will be talking about especially this, that it's a tough balance that you need to keep. About the public-private partnerships, I still couldn't think about any good examples in Hungary. However, it would be very important. And one thing one field where I see some possibilities for that is exactly digitalization. Especially when we are talking, for example, and that's very important for us, clinical trials. In clinical trials field, Hungary held a rather nice position within Europe. Now there is very big competition within Europe for maintaining the level of clinical trials performed in the continent of Europe, where we Hungarians need to improve our positions to at least maintain the level or even elevate it. And in this sense, I would see the possibility for public-private partnership, even in a way like not the classical public-private partnership where the private part owns part of the project, but rather to contribute, because that's the interest of the industry. So in this sense, we are already reaching out to the government quite a lot and trying to have inputs on what we as an industry would need in order for the government to gain more clinical trials here. So that is a place where I would see, like on a short term, an easy to achieve subject of partnering up, which is not painful at all, I would say.
Thank you for that. Wolfgang, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think you covered it very well.
All right, well, you'll get a chance to speak now then, Wolfgang. Let's talk about supply chain resilience and management. And I think I'm going to, because we have talked about this in the past on this panel, so I'm going to sort of fold two questions into one, really, which is, what can be done to better identify shortages of types of drugs and fill in the gaps, both on the manufacturing side and the logistics side, because it's one thing to make it, it's another thing to get it out there. And whose responsibility should it be to maintain that stock and ensure that that's working? Is that on the manufacturers or the logistics companies, or is it on the state, or is it on some collegiate body that's yet to be formed to make sure that we can identify where these issues are and find answers to them in time? Wolfgang?
Yeah, as you said, you never ask simple questions, sir. But here maybe let me answer. I don't know whether these are the right questions, because at the end of the day, to identify stockouts, to speak about who shall be responsible that we have enough on stock, this does not really deal with the root cause. And I think this is not really the solution to the problem.
All right, take us there then. So what's the root cause?
No, what I say at the end of the day, but we discussed it over the last 20 years. The focus of the governments or the health insurance was to get the products for the lowest price. And that leads at the end of the day to a situation that we have consolidation of the production in the Far East. And just a few supplier with long logistical ways. And now we feel the risk if I depend on one supplier which is far away, and I think this is something which we should think about, especially in Europe. I mean, it's also a question if we see the geopolitical situations whether we would like to be dependent on these countries in the Far East. But it's difficult because to ramp up a pharma factory, this is nothing which happens within a short time. And I think, and then we talk again about money. Are the governments ready to tender maybe always one, 2 or 3 winners and pay a bit more, that it makes sense to have this? But this is as a general approach. So when we talking about then, coming back to your question, the question, what can we do to identify the stockouts quicker? I think we relatively quickly identify them because there are no more products. Yeah? I think there are databases in place. The government start to set up databases on a local and the European level. But it's also important to say, and I think the presentation of IQVIA, I think in one of our breakfasts here also showed that the good news is that for most of the stockouts, there are available alternatives in the market. Of course, there are products which are not available, which is a problem for a certain group of patients. But the problem is not so big, I think, as it looks like. And there's another thing. If you look at the European pharma market, this is that we have different prices everywhere. And I think this also creates problems. We call this a parallel imports. And what we see at Pheonix Group is that these countries which have the highest prices, they usually have stock. So because the producers know exactly when they will run out of stock. Usually the markets with the highest prices gets the products. And there's economic logic behind this. And I think this is something what maybe makes sense to tackle on the European level, to have more of a common market and maybe a common pricing.
That would certainly seem like a sensible idea. I don't know whether it's unrealistic achievement.
Totally.
Katalin.
Just shortly, totally unrealistic, I have to say. Coming back to your question, whose responsibility? It's totally a common responsibility of all you mentioned, beginning from the state, the manufacturer, the wholesalers, even the pharmacies, and the patients themselves. So it's you cannot name one single institution or one single actor whose responsibilities. And getting back to both of what Judit and Wolfgang was saying about the European competitiveness, that's, I think, the biggest problem of Europe as such. And what we are struggling is that the nation states of Europe are in a single-minded way trying to tackle their own problem, whereas actually we do have a global problem where Europe is considered as one of the players, and Europe is considering itself 27 whatever players. It's not feasible like that. And then you have the problems of the differences between the prices within Europe. And in this sense, we have to say that Hungary is in a very bad position, as we see within our companies. But okay, I'm representing here the innovative pharma, but I have to say some words about the generics, where you want to keep the prices so low that actually at one point it will become economically unviable to produce those drugs. And if you want to achieve full coverage for Europe, then you have to accept the economic nature of the whole industry, and that includes the generics and that includes the innovatives. But it's especially painful, I have to say, for the generics. So this is something that the whole European Union has to think about. And when we have the Draghi report, which identifies healthcare and pharma as an important industry, we have to act on it. We have to really do our legislation in the European Union. Like, okay, do we want pharma industry in Europe or not? May it be generic or innovative? And that's where I see problem. That we have the so-called pro-innovative countries within Europe, but nobody step up when it's about competition. They should. They should step up for their people. They should step up for their pharma industry.
Judit, wearing the EU presidency hat, we know that pushing competitiveness has been a very strong issue. We know that the Draghi report was very well received. I'm not entirely sure that there's been a consensus of agreement in how you go forward from it, but at least there's something out there that identifies problems. Where does the Hungarian government stand on Wolfgang's pipe dream of a pan-European approach?
Okay, so during the discussion of the pharma package, we have some interesting conversation, and part of them attaching the shortages as well. And if I'm right, maybe I'm not. I was told that in Germany initiated a new legislation which has Germany, where the prices are the highest in Europe, I guess, initiated a new legislation which says that all the wholesalers have to have 6 weeks stocks on the stock, which is extremely high. I've learned from the wholesalers' price, because there was a debate when we tried to increase the 3 weeks to 4 weeks, and Germany initiated a legislation which shows us that it's not necessarily is the truth that in those countries where have a highest price are available everything. So there was a huge debate within the Commission on this, if it is acceptable or not. Of course, it's a country-specific legislation, but still there are some other problems. And just a sentence on the multi-winner tender, because it's a very popular issue to solve. We have just made an analysis on the tenders provided by the CAF. I don't know the English name. Everyone knows it's CAF. You should learn. Who is the brand new ones? You should learn what is. Okay, you will be discussed. what is CAF? I won't
Center of Public Procurement Authority, I would say.
Yeah, more or less. Yes. And they have multi-winner tenders. But the most serious shortages in the last year was in the hospitals, which are provided by CAF medication procured by CAF. So it's an interesting thing whether this can be a solution for everything. But to answer your question, sorry, but I had to reflect on sentence. I'm a little bit skeptic on a pan-European pricing base. Especially, I can imagine, and we started somehow to close the Caesars between these countries, but it's implicate themselves that there should be some additional tax or something like that, because the economical affordability is quite different in different countries. So that's why you have to accept, okay, if there is general pricing and general price level in every country, then you should somehow compensate the prices to the government, because the government's affordability is much less than the Western European countries.
Earlier, Wolfgang told me I was asking the wrong question, and I'm very happy to admit that I may sometimes ask the wrong questions, or perhaps not the right questions, which is not exactly the same thing. But we actually did get a question suggested from Christoph. So let me ask that question, Christoph, and you can answer it first, since you've had time to think about it, which is, and it is related to this, so could personalized medicine help with supply shortages and rising medical costs? I suppose the idea being that if you're tailoring medicine to specific people, then you know exactly what they need and when they need it, and therefore you should be able to cope with it.
So the answer in general should be yes. It's a long way to get there.
I think the mic's off again.
No, it's on. It's just my voice is not loud enough. So in general, you need to know who you treat with what. And not only this, you also need to know how this particular patient responds, because things change over time. So it's not just linear. You take one aspirin, your headache is gone. That's the only treatment that works in 100% of all people in this world that I know of. You need to also check if there's a long-term treatment, is it still effective 6 months later, 6 years later? And for this, you need molecular markers. This is what we are starting to develop now. And for this, unfortunately, the industry is not really interested in getting to sponsor that, because the more pills they sell, the more income they have. And if you tell them, I will cut your income by 30% because 30% of the people won't respond to what you sell, and we make this a companion diagnostic, so you sell the pill together with a test, they are not really in favor of that. So this means that this is something that governments need to look at, because the governments, i.e. us, the taxpayers, pay for everything in this healthcare system, right? So we need to really be aware that there are certain trends where private industry needs to be complemented with government funding initially. Then when it's done, the government wins because the cost for the treatment will go down. And the patients win because they really get the treatment that works. And that is something that doesn't work for a very large part of the population right now, and probably for even more in Hungary, because we do not have enough of a handle on the different genetic background of the people living in Hungary today. Because so far, the studies on the genomic side, not genetic side, genomic side, are incomplete, to say the least. The most complete is Iceland. Everyone has been sequenced. Fantastic. But they are a very coherent cohort, okay? So there's not many different diverse populations in Iceland, I can assure you of. But here in Hungary, that's completely different, as you all know. So this is something where we need to invest, and then we need to invest into companion diagnostic development using cheap, efficient, fast molecular markers for early diagnostic, early, not stage 4 cancer. This is impossible to really make an extra contribution to, because you take one image with an X-ray machine, you're done, okay? But you need to know 5 years earlier. And then the treatment cost goes down, the survival rate of the patients goes up. And this is something where I see a new kind of private and government relationship emerging, where the government drives it, not the private industry, because the private industry will initially at least suffer losses.
Thank you, Christoph. Kata, you are quite keen to come in.
Yes, I need to reflect. Some issues. First, when Sylvain, you were mentioning like you will know that it happened after it happened. With personalized medicine, I think it's quite the same concept, that it's happening inevitably, whatever we do. But I would refuse that it's not in the interest of the industry. It's not in the industry. It's not in the interest of the whole system as it is right now, everybody will have to adapt. But it's also true, for example, the payers, and it's not only here in Hungary, but in general, the payers, because when you have precise medicine, precision medicine, then sometimes it costs a lot more. So you have to set up like a whole new system for that, not only on the industry side, but also on the payer side and on the whole healthcare system side, even healthcare providers. So I wouldn't just pick on the industry in this sense. That's one thing. The other thing why I was very keen on to say is that many times industry and the industrial players are said to be greedy and just going for the money, which is not true. I mean, researches are done in these places, and it's in their economic interest to go forward in this. Otherwise, they will lose the market on the long term. So I wouldn't put it like such a black and white picture in this for the industry, and neither for the governments or the payers.
Wolfgang?
One quick
No.
comment on this.
Of course.
I'm developing molecular markers for more than 20 years. I've shopped it around pharma industry, large and small, for over that time. I've never gotten a single forint from any of the industrial partners for development, even though in some cases it was obvious that it would be beneficial to both partners. So far, the mentality is not there from my point of view, and that has to change, because we will all pay more taxes for healthcare provision every year. This is a God-given. And if you still want to pay pensions, government salaries, and fix your roads, you have only a certain percentage that you can spend on healthcare. And if you don't find any means to lower the cost for non-working treatments, then you are really in a predicament.
In this, I totally agree, but I'm just saying that your personal experience does not mean that that's for the whole industry. It means that the industry is working on its own, because the industry, the big companies are working on it. So they do have their own researchers, they do have their own labs. It might be your perception, and I totally respect that. And with all the others that you said, I totally agree with that we need to find a more efficient way to operate healthcare.
Well, maybe some of your members could be introduced to Christoph. And we'll see what happens with that. Wolfgang, I know that you wanted to say something.
I'm on LinkedIn, okay.
I will send around your details.
I also believe that there's a big potential to reduce costs with the personalized medicine and treatments. Foremost, it will, for a lot of patients, improve the treatment quality. Whether this helps to solve our current problem with stockouts, I don't think so, because for the foreseeable future, these are very specific therapeutic fields. I wanted to comment on what Judit said on the German laws. Or even Germans tend sometimes to do mistakes. But also the German health minister stated that the problem is not as big as it seems with the stockouts. It's a bit maybe driven by the press, a bit populistic. What at the moment is here in the discussion. And coming back to, I also do not believe that we will have a common European prices, but maybe on a European level we can make it a bit easier to shift products from one country to the other. At the moment, there's a lot of work with repackaging and so on, and there we might have quite some flexibility. At the end of the day, it comes then also to the question, in case there's a product missing in Hungary, would you be ready for a certain time to pay more in case we bring it maybe from France to Hungary? Because the question is, who pays the difference? Beside all the logistical efforts, which might be, there might be a solution to make it easier. The question is, who pays the price difference?
Actually, we already paid, because if there is shortages from a certain product, but there is no available any other comparative product, then there is again, I don't know, in English you will tell it to your colleagues, it's a contingent approval, so contingent engedély. which allows all the wholesalers to get the product for a higher price into Hungary. So it's still an existing system, but I fully agree that I think, and especially for the personalized medicine or orphan medication, when the market is the whole European one, I think we have to move to the multi-language packaging and so on, because it's not necessarily have the and especially those products that are admitted in the hospital, for example, it's not necessarily need to have on the box Hungarian language language letter or something. It is okay if it is available online or something, and the patient can check it. So I fully agree on that.
Good, we got some agreement. We're running short on time, so I'm gonna thank you for that question, by the way, Christoph. It was obviously the right question. I want to wrap the next section, because we're going to talk about workforce, because we always end up, as I said at the start, we do a number of these platforms, and it doesn't matter if we're talking with AmCham or the German Chamber or whoever, we invariably come back to workforce. So I'm going to ask I'm going to bundle a couple of questions together on workforce, and then hopefully we might have time to open up to the floor afterwards. So I think there are three challenges with workforce. The first is, are we getting enough kids through STEM classes? And the sort of caveat to that is, what about the girls? Because increasingly, and this isn't a Hungarian thing, it seems to be a worldwide problem, girls, although they're often better at STEM, don't take it up. So what are we doing about making sure that kids actually study STEM classes, and what to do about gender equality in that? What do we then do? So that's to get them to university. Then we get them to university. Are we happy that the level of education we're getting from universities is good enough for the people that you employ? And that's not just, are they technically good? It's, do they have the ability to sit in a room and talk to people? Because that's quite important as well. And then I think third to that, because obviously the state has a function in providing education, but increasingly we know that industry has a role to play in that as well. So what can industry be doing more to help solve the problems for one and two? It's a big question bundled up as one, and Wolfgang's staring daggers at me now. So we're going to go with you, Kata, first.
Okay, it's a huge problem that you're mentioning, and I'm sorry, I know that it's not your responsibility, but that's a problem of how the government perceives actually these fields, education and healthcare.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we don't have our own minister.
There you go.
Like when you, none of them. Yeah, for neither the education nor the healthcare, which means that when you're sitting at a government meeting, then healthcare and education is not represented there by their own.
Yeah.
So when we are fighting for the budget, when we are fighting for any sort of resources, the two most important, if we are thinking about the future of Hungarian people, the two most important fields are not represented at the government table. So that's like the baseline for this. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. The other thing, you will not have a future neither for pharma industry nor for any sort of STEM if you don't have the teachers for that. Mm-hmm. And we have shortage of those teachers and the methods how they are teaching. And I have two kids, 10 and 12 years old, and they are attending a very good public school here in Budapest. Still, I can see where they are compared to my relatives in the US. Mm-hmm. Same public school. It's ridiculous. And we already hear from the generic manufacturers who are in Hungary that when they try to hire people to their manufacturing facilities, they are in lack of people. Because for us innovatives, we are globally playing. We can have the best from the US, we can have the best from the UK, but they are competing here in Hungary. So it's very important for the future of the Hungarian pharma industry as such. And STEM, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but we are not there yet. We have so long way to go. And this is something where we can partner up with the government again, just like the prevention, to somehow point this out, to help. And this is again something that we would be very much willing to do because it's in our interest, it's in the interest of the government, and it's in the interest of us Hungarian people who are living here and who will be living here hopefully in the coming decades.
That point about teachers is also really important. Thank you for making that. Christoph, you're at the kind of the very far end of this educational training, and I know that you also take, you have Finnish researchers, you have all kinds of researchers there.
Yes. So
is it a problem?
I was a university professor in Canada and in Austria for more than 20 years. I can tell you from my point of view, compared to Austria, especially same in Europe, okay, Hungarians are much better. So if I go into biotechnology class in Austria, first day of the new students, 350 of them, and I ask them who here can program, one hand goes up. Okay, 349 cannot program, have no clue how to use a computer except for computer gaming. Here in Hungary, we have a different tradition, which has to do still with the old days before 1989, where science, technology, and especially natural sciences were very much strongly favored in the education system. Amongst other things, do forget those, but those are, to this day, especially in the mathematics field and such, very strong components that you can build on. So I don't have a problem in hiring Hungarian for very high quality jobs. I pay better than universities and such. They compete very favorably with Finnish, German, Dutch, which I also have group leaders of, by international peer review. So anytime I hire a group leader that's with international peer review only, there's not a single Hungarian on the panel deciding on who becomes the group leader with me at all. And I cannot recruit a group leader without the panel saying, yes, go for it, at all. So there is still a lot of quality personnel in Hungary that you can work with. What you need to build is actually really from ministries and funding agencies, funding programs and structures that allow you to really put things into place. And one example of that is us. Like, I'm almost retired, so I can say whatever I want, okay? So it won't affect me in another year anymore. We have now an international competitive entity that talks to international key players here in Hungary within 4 years' time. And that is with 90% plus Hungarians working in it, and it's 300 of them. It's not one or two, okay? So you can do this, and I fully agree, like on your level, at the age of your kids, there may be a problem, but for one generation before that, there isn't really a problem in Hungary compared to, say, Austria, from my point of view. And I've taught Austrians for 10 years, okay, with one PhD student graduating from my lab in that entire time, because I'm a bioinformatician. I do things that the Technical University in Graz cannot educate. And I have had in my class 1,000 students, mandatory, okay? From 1,000, one graduated. Here in Hungary, I would have hundreds. Okay, that's the difference, a huge one that you need to recognize. So don't make yourself look bad, because you're not bad. There is a lot of potential here, just utilize the potential.
Yeah, well, thank you for that perspective, because it's always good to have one. Wolfgang, can you employ enough people of the right quality? Are you the point that Christoph made, that maybe it's the generation below the generation that he's dealing with? Do you foresee problems?
Yeah, we see
challenges?
We see problems, obviously, like in most sectors, there's a lack of professionals, whether we talk about pharmacists or mathematicians, IT, and so on. But I think the questions you raised were more about what's happening at the school. My observation is, and I'm on the board of the German school by chance, and I have contact to the students. I also have kids, and my observation is that on the one hand, there's a lack of teachers who have this really as a professional. We have a lot of teachers who learned this add-on. But if you would like to convince the kids that they would like to go into the direction, you need a teacher who's burning for this, who is not teaching you this in, okay, you have to do this, and it's a pain. You know, a teacher is really important. Yeah, you look at him and see he has this passion about the topic, and so emotionally also attracts you into this. And the other thing is, a lot of the kids are missing the vision. What can I do? What can I do as a mathematician, as a chemist, or whatever? Because there's so many studies nowadays, and they are so unsure. They don't know what to do. I'm participating in roundtables where we are talking to kids about their future plans and try a bit to be a sparring partner, and they say, I don't know, I rather do something which puts me in a flexible position. I'm going for international project management. And I say, well, what are you going to do with that? Yeah, this is not a study. This is maybe a training you can do on a weekend. Yeah? So what I want to say is maybe, and we always complain and the things, but I think maybe what the industry can do is to support the schools and the government in really motivating them, showing the kids what you can do, how great, how cool is that to work in this field, and that you can make a change. And I think this is what we can do, and I think if the kids are interested to do that, we should not under-evaluate their ability to learn also for themselves, even if the teacher is not so great.
My almost 13-year-old always wanted to be a paleontologist, and I was very happy about that. And now he wants to be a YouTuber. I'm less happy about that. Judit, is there anything from the government side you'd like to add?
Not necessarily on the government perspective, but just raise two issues on that. I've just heard the presentation in the European Commission, and then it was told that we will much more earlier we will lack of human resources than lack of money. So especially on healthcare, and I think it's valid for every sector as well, that although there is not enough money, of course, we have not enough workforce as well. So it's really a huge problem on the and through the European level. And I just again saw a presentation yesterday last week in a conference, and it was demonstrated the knowledge transfer between different countries. And it's quite interesting, and I think, although I 100% agree, and not just because I am also a bioinformatician, but of course that in Hungary there is a huge knowledge hub and knowledge depot on that. But most of the students studying to have the possibility to go to abroad for working, or to have an international job, or not international project management, for example, but still to have an international job, and that's also could be a little problem. I fully agree that the generation, I will miss it, X and Alpha maybe have the possibility to really have a certification on different areas, but they try to manage it to have the possibility to have an international work.
Yeah, because going isn't the problem. It's them coming back or not coming back that's the problem. We are very close to the end of our time, and Judit, as ever, is on a ticking clock. There's probably a cab waiting for her. Does anyone have any questions from the floor they would like to share with our esteemed colleagues? Because I'm sure your questions will be better than mine. Do we get everything? Have we covered everything? Is there nothing? Well, if there's nothing, then obviously my questions were good. I'll accept that. That's a win. That's a win. That's 10 o'clock in the morning, and I've got my win. So, in that case, I think we should, unless we have, I think, a few minutes. Is there anything that we have not covered, panel, as a final thought that you would like to leave with the audience? We'll start with you, Judit, as you're nearest me.
I think this was really a very wide range of different topics, so I think we covered everything, and there will be lots of moving toward. And just one sentence, because I always would like to emphasize, and I'm so proud of that we managed the European presidency, I think, in a very high level in the healthcare system. We are quite acknowledged in the European level. And thank you for your cooperation as well, because it was really, I think, a very good cooperation with the different areas of the healthcare system.
Thank you, Judith. Christoph, a final thought for the audience.
Final thought for the audience, there's work to do.
There's always work to do.
We're ready to work, so let's talk about whatever is something where we can make an improvement in Hungary, because there is definitely areas where that can be done. And there are certain areas that we should talk about in different ways, like how can professors be professors full-time, fully paid in 3 different universities simultaneously that are 200 kilometers apart? How can be that
sounds like
fully
personal interest.
HCEMM members are also fully working for a salary, blocking a position for a new person coming back. There's a lot of things like that that prevent the people that are being educated right now to stay in Hungary and work here right now. And this is something that is systemic, and the law in Hungary needs to be looked at. That's my thought on this.
Thank you, Christoph. Kata. If there's nothing to add, that's fine as well.
There's work to do, indeed. There's work to do in the short term, but especially future-proofing Hungary in terms of education and healthcare.
Thank you. Wolfgang.
Okay, I'm very optimistic that we will solve all the work ahead in a good way. And I want to say, Christoph, what you did and your institute, based on the support of the Hungarian state, also shows that things can be changed and speeded up really in a great way, and that gives me also hope.
That's a very good point, actually, and I do know that one of the reasons why Christoph, who is far too modest to say this, was asked to take it on was that because the HCEMM already existed, and Christoph came in to accelerate it, and I think has done a remarkable job in that regard. So let me give you a few takeaways. We have covered a lot of ground, and I think perhaps the best way to do this is to focus on there are always some lines that jump out, and one of them came very early on, which is that we need to partner with industry, and this was from you, Christoph, in case you don't recognize it. We need to partner with industry for what industry wants rather than what we want to do. I think that's important. It's clear from well, actually it's clear from this roundtable, but it's also clear from the 2 others that we did before that there is an openness to collaborate for the benefit of all. So that's always pleasing to see, and I hope that continues, that we need cooperation in health, that we may not be able to get a pan-European solution that solves everything, but that certainly there are areas where we can work. Logistics might be one of them. Or rather dropping the need for multi-language signage on boxes may be another. It's really interesting to have, we have gender balance today. We also have nationality balance. 2 women, 2 Hungarians, 2 men, 2 Germans. But it's nice and we all know why diversity works, but it's really good to have a different input. So, Christoph, I'm pleased to hear that your experiences with education at least at your level, are positive. Kata, I share your fears with my YouTuber son. But there is hope out there, and I think that's perhaps the big takeaway that I'd like to leave us with from today, is that as long as you have intelligent people who can sit down and disagree, but disagree openly and with respect, and a willingness to listen to the other side, then there are always chances. And as Christoph and Kata said, ladies and gentlemen, there is work to do, and that's over to you in large part. So I'd like to thank all our speakers again this morning. Our keynote presentation from Sylvain Hanssen, the Group Director at Pheonix Pharmahandel. Please give him one last round of applause. And to our excellent roundtable panelists, Dr. Judit Bidlo, Christoph W, I always want to say Christopher because I have a brother, Christopher, I do apologize, Christoph W. Sensen, Dr. Katalin Szalo, and Wolfgang Wallisch. Thank you then. Thank them. I've been Robin Marshall. I'm still editor-in-chief. Well, I actually have to speak with my bosses after this. But for the moment, I'm still editor-in-chief of the Budapest Business Journal. It's been a pleasure to host this conversation for you. We look forward to seeing you at the next one of these in a few months' time. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.